table that and normalize that rather than kind of inheriting the "this is your brain on drugs" propaganda, which was garbage in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is interesting because I could see this from many different kind of perspectives. Certainly from the perspective you approach it in and the way the book is written, it totally makes logical sense. It's definitely consistent with your point of view. I think my curiosity stems from instances where I've heard of Eastern gurus or practitioners who ingested these substances, sometimes extreme amounts, and seem to have no reaction whatsoever to them. And I'm wondering, do you have any kind of rationalization or what's going on in those type of situations?
A lot of it's dosage. A lot of it can be what you bring to it. If you do the ayahuasca thing right, you're given sort of dietary protocols to follow for the several weeks beforehand. And if you don't do it, that's part of the journey. You're going to get it to work if you do it right and in the right situation, especially when you're dealing with people who've been, they've been doing this for longer than there have been countries in Europe. So it's probably that person's fault in that case. There are rare instances perhaps, but again, it's inexact. Take more, do it again, that being said, I kind of mentioned the psychedelia stuff in passing on the way to talking about the headless rite, which is the sort of inevitable, not necessarily conclusion, but I was very pleased to see that people realize why I put the headless rite in Chaos Protocols after having written Starship. But you don't necessarily have to. If it doesn't work, there could be something. Everyone's different in that sense. But mostly when I hear people say it doesn't work for me or everyone's different, it's a fear response. You'll have these anecdotal stories or people won't do it right. I was watching on the weekend, I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, the Chelsea Handler series, and the episode Chelsea Does Drugs. And she goes to the Amazon to do this, but they're drinking beforehand. She didn't get an effect. So it's a bit nervous and not wanting to do it beforehand. And they were drinking and she didn't obey the dietary rules beforehand and she didn't get any effect and did it again and, got to throw up and what have you. Now that's her fault. That's not the ayahuasca. So when you have people say it didn't work, there are questions you can ask afterwards.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about working with the dead, and why did you debate including it in your book?
When Alicia and I were kind of talking about the shape of the book, I explicitly did not want it to be a chaos magic book or anything like that. I find there are, and it doesn't happen for a while, but I'm sure you would have read them as well as a kid or kind of coming up. There's some sort of hilarious, monumental arrogance in a how-to book about an entire religion, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to avoid any prescriptions to do with mandatory spirit beings in any way because I was really trying to distance myself from the shape of a how-to book. And probably the most mandatory thing in there is ancestral engagement. Again, it comes back to we now have the opportunity in the last 15 or so years to kind of observe in a hopefully non-racist, but still definitely non-racist, but there are still delicacies about how we engage with the information. But there are shapes that are emerging on a planetary basis of how this stuff may or may not work once you fold in the historical information and phenomenological data and so on. And a really key one is, the dead in general, but ancestors in particular. And there's something at the very beginning of ancestors that is sort of like the origins of the gods. I went to, what was it? What day is this? So on Monday, there was a lecture at the British Museum I went to about the Polynesian creator god A'a. And it's this amazing statue that was acquired, inevitably by British missionaries in the 1800s from an island in Polynesia. It's this remarkable statue, and the back of it kind of opens, so it's sort of this 1.5 foot tall carved sandalwood creator god, and it's covered in little tiny other human figures, and the back of it opens, and it's just the right shape for the human long bones and a skull. And so here's a creator god that probably had ancestral bones in it. Now that's really interesting to me because at the beginning of the saintly tradition, so St. George didn't exist as a person, but his sacred sites appear to be the graves of sort of like a popular and successful warlord. So we have this blending of ancestors and gods at the very, very beginning. And I find that hugely interesting and kind of tantalizing in its implications. But from a practical perspective, this is why this stuff landed in the book. After doing when I broke down where I think the probability enhancement kind of ongoing effects are, on a macro level, you can say, as Jason Miller would, offerings. On a slightly less macro level, the one that seems to have worked the best is kind of regular acknowledgement, offerings, engagement, whatever you want to call it, with the ancestors. So it's kind of obscenely reductionist to say working with the ancestors is luck magic, but it is. Things seem to go your way slightly better once you start to have that ongoing engagement with dead people who would presumably be predisposed to you. And even the ones that aren't, you can either ignore, like the really bad ones, because I certainly acknowledge that, families are dicks. But even beyond that, if you had challenging, grandparents or great-grandparents that you may not have met that have clearly messed up the family down there, there's something really... I left this out of the book, but there's something very indicative about how that can kind of cool or fix or reset some kind of like bloodline imbalances, and you'll find that there's you will observe that manifests as kind of like less trauma in your life, and that's kind of our job. That's what magicians or people, whatever word you want to use for it, that's sort of what we've done, and that appears to be what Neanderthal versions of us did. That appears to be the thing that seems to help quite a bit. And so I had to put it in because it's almost like I got in on a technicality. It's a religious belief, which I didn't want to put in there. It's a personal belief of mine that I didn't, I don't support with data or anything other than anecdotes. I'm just like, this is a belief of mine that I now recommend you do. Tried to avoid it. It got in on the technicality, which is, I can call it luck magic. But the response has been very good. I had some questions as well. Funnily enough, people involved in the book were actually adopted. So I said, do I need to put an adopted bit in? And I got straight back, some of the people involved in this book are adopted. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll put that piece in. But kind of navigating how you say things about people's families was interesting. And the feedback's been very positive. People seem to resonate with the idea or recognize it because they're already doing it.
Yeah, no, I was glad to see it in there, and I was, to me, it was like a no-brainer. I felt like, if you're talking about, like you said, increasing your probability for success, like, this is definitely a key part of doing that, and to me, it was a perfect fit, yeah.
And you're sort of asking questions that, I tell you what, let me put it this way. So, Scarlet Imprint books deal with, the top of the magical pyramid, people who aren't new, who are interested in moving ideas forward and so on. And that's amazing, and that was a great journey. And when I was going backwards and forwards with Llewellyn, because people have formed a negative opinion of them, because people tend to forget that once they were new as well.
Yeah, right.
So, I don't have a problem with people being new. I had to be told, this is what was wonderful about the editing process, because my editor would come back and tell me, you need to realize that I know you say that this won't be the first book people read, but what if it is? Or what if it's the second book? And so for me, it was a no-brainer as well. I thought I could just kind of launch into a bit more of the esoterics of ancestors, and I got pulled back down to, no, table this as an idea, and that's been good. So new people have been like, okay, either I was doing this and I sort of feel validated that this is the right thing to be doing for me, or people are like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm quite excited by it. And that's been pleasing.
Gordon White, thank you so much. The book is The Chaos Protocols, Magical Techniques for Navigating the New Economic Reality. Your website is runesoup.com. Maybe before we depart, you might share with people listening just a brief few words about your conversation with Jason Miller. I know you and he are friends, and you both are highly regarded, and you both have now got books on success, wealth, magic, although I don't think they're comparable myself, but I think it's interesting that you were talking about them.
Well, so Jason and I have been friends for a number of years now. Like, I've been to New Jersey and we've hung out and all that kind of thing. I'm just trying to work out, I was guessing that by the time this episode came out, that basically there's a video conversation that Jason and I had last night that's up on my YouTube channel. So obviously it's the most recent recorded conversation. Mm-hmm. It was top of mind for this one. So that's what I meant by when, Jason and I were chatting. But if people are interested, you can find it on Rune Soup, and obviously find the YouTube page there, or just, go to YouTube and type in Rune Soup.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to put a link in the show notes. So thank you.
Nice.
Very cool. I want to check that out. So thank you, Gordon White, again.
You're very welcome. Always a pleasure.
In the Occult of Personality membership section, Gordon White and I continue the interview, focusing on specific magical techniques and rituals that he recommends. Don't miss that crucial conversation. Just go to occultofpersonality.net/membership and sign up if you haven't already. It's the best way to support the podcast while receiving access to a tremendous amount of additional exclusive content. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.
Slither by